children who come back from the woods the same as they left, and there are children who don't. I have watched this forest for a long time, long enough to know the difference. Walk with me tonight. My name is Silas, though some still call me the Wanderer. I have been walking these woods for longer than most things survive, and tonight I will tell you what I witnessed. The Callaway house sat at the end of a dirt road that most people in town had stopped using years ago, not for any particular reason anyone could name. Roads fall out of use. People find other ways. That is simply how it goes. The house itself was ordinary. White paint, gone gray from the winters. A wide porch with 2 wooden chairs. A rusted wind chime that barely moved, even when the air did. Daniel and Sarah Callaway had moved there with their son 3 years before this story begins. They liked the quiet. That was the word Daniel used when people asked why they chose such a remote place. Quiet. Sarah used a different word. She said it felt safe. I found that interesting even then. Their son was 8 years old. His name was Miles. He was a small boy with dark eyes and the kind of stillness that adults sometimes mistake for shyness. He wasn't shy. He was watchful. There's a difference. That summer had been dry. The creek that ran behind the property had shrunk to a slow trickle. The pines held their color, but the underbrush had turned pale and brittle. Miles spent most of his days outside. His parents had set boundaries for him. The yard, the field along the south side of the house, the first row of trees no deeper. He knew the rules. He followed them as far as his parents could see. The first week of August was when things began to shift. Not dramatically, not all at once. That is rarely how it works. It started with Miles coming home later than usual. Sarah noticed on a Tuesday he had been in the yard, and then at some point she'd looked up from the kitchen window and he wasn't there anymore. She didn't panic immediately. She called his name from the porch. He appeared from the tree line after about 3 minutes, walking slowly, not running the way children run when they know they're in trouble, just walking, calm. Sarah asked where he'd been. He said he'd been playing. She asked, with what? He said, nothing. She let it go. Parents let things go, especially when everything looks fine. It happened again on Thursday and on Friday. Each time, Miles came back from the direction of the trees. Each time, a little later. By the end of that first week, he was arriving at the back door just as the sky was turning, that deep amber color that comes before dark. Daniel sat him down on Saturday morning, not sternly, just firmly. He asked Miles if he understood the rules. Miles said yes. Daniel asked if he'd been going past the first row of trees. Miles looked at his father for a moment before answering. He said no. Daniel believed him. I am not sure why. The boy's face had not changed when he said it, not a flicker. That stillness again. The following Monday was the first time Miles mentioned the friend. Sarah was washing dishes. Miles was sitting at the kitchen table, drawing something on a piece of paper. Without looking up, he said, "Can my friend come over for dinner sometime?" Sarah asked, "Which friend?" Miles said a name. She didn't recognize it. She asked if it was someone from school. Miles shook his head slowly. He kept drawing. Sarah dried her hands and sat down across from him. She asked where he had met this friend. Miles said, "In the woods." Sarah asked when. He said they'd been playing together for a while now. He said it the way children say things that they assume adults already know. Matter of fact, unbothered, Sarah looked down at the paper Miles had been drawing on. She expected a house or a car, or the kind of scribble most 8-year-olds produce. Instead, it was a figure, tall, thin, standing between two trees. She asked Miles what the drawing was. He folded it once and slid it under his placemat. He said, "Nothing." That night, Sarah told Daniel about the friend. They talked about it the way parents talk about things that concern them but don't yet alarm them. Could be imaginary, Daniel said, or a neighborhood kid they hadn't met. The Pelham family lived about 2 miles east. They had kids. Maybe one of them had wandered over during the summer. Children do that in rural places. They make their own maps. Sarah said she'd look into it. She meant it. But the next day was busy. And then the day after that. And the way that time works, it slipped. I have seen that happen many times. A detail that should be followed like a thread, left on the table instead. The change in Miles came gradually, and then one morning, all at once. For the first 2 weeks of August, he had simply seemed distant, quieter at meals, slower to respond when called. His parents marked it as a phase. Summer doldrums, Daniel said. A child growing inward for a while, before growing outward again. But around the 3rd week, other things appeared. Small things. Miles stopped eating certain foods he had previously liked, not with complaint, not with refusal. He would simply look at the food and then look away and leave it untouched. Sarah made grilled cheese on a Thursday, his favorite since he was 4. He stared at it. Then he looked out the window toward the tree line. He said he wasn't hungry. He had never not been hungry for grilled cheese. Sarah noted it but said nothing. The sleep changes came next. Miles had always been a sound sleeper. Daniel once joked that the boy could sleep through the end of the world. But now he was waking up, not screaming, not crying, just waking. Sarah would check on him and find him sitting upright in his bed facing the window. Not frightened looking, just alert, watching. When she asked what he was doing, he would say he was listening. She asked what he was listening to. He said, "The sounds." She listened. There were no sounds, just the pines, just the wind. Miles would look at her with those calm, dark eyes and say, "You can't hear it yet." Then he would lie back down and close his eyes. Within a minute, he would appear to be asleep. Sarah would stand in the doorway for a while longer. She would listen to the quiet. I will not say what I know about quiet, only that it is not always what people think it is. The friend came up again on August 20th. Daniel had taken the afternoon off work. He and Miles were throwing a baseball in the yard. It was one of those golden late summer afternoons, the kind that feel like they're trying to mean something. Miles threw the ball, then he stopped. He looked toward the tree line. Daniel asked what he was looking at. Miles said, "He's watching." Daniel turned. He saw trees. He saw the long shadows the trees made in the afternoon light. He saw nothing else. He asked Miles who was watching. Miles said his friend's name again. Daniel asked where exactly. Miles pointed to a specific place between 2 pines at the edge of the yard. Daniel walked over. He stood there. He looked. The underbrush was undisturbed. There were no footprints in the dry dirt near the tree base. He called out, feeling slightly foolish. No one answered. He came back to Miles. He asked if Miles was sure. Miles said, "He left when you walked over." Daniel crouched down to his son's level. He looked at Miles carefully. The boy's expression was not playful. He was not teasing. He was reporting a fact. Daniel suggested gently that maybe the friend wasn't real, that maybe Miles had invented him. Miles said nothing for a moment. Then he said, "He told me you might say that." That evening, Daniel called the Pelhams. He kept it casual, asked how their summer was going, worked his way around to asking about the kids. Were any of them spending time near the Callaway property lately? Mrs. Pelham said no. Their oldest had been at camp most of the summer. The younger two weren't allowed near to Old Woods Road. She said it without explanation, the way people say things they've already decided they don't want to explain. Daniel thanked her and hung up. He sat at the kitchen table for a while. Sarah came in. He told her what Mrs. Pelham had said, the part about the kids not being allowed near the road. They looked at each other. Neither of them asked the obvious question out loud. Some questions feel safer left unasked. I have watched people make that choice before. It does not usually serve them well. The last week of August arrived with a change in the air, that particular coolness that comes early in northern places, a reminder that the season is willing to leave without you. Miles had stopped going into the yard, unless asked. He spent more time near the window, the one that faced the back, the tree line. Sarah caught him there one morning very early, before sunrise. He was standing completely still, his forehead not quite touching the glass, his breath making a small fog circle that appeared and disappeared. Appeared and disappeared. She said his name softly. He didn't startle. He turned around the way someone turns when they already knew you were there. She asked him what he was doing. He said, "Saying goodbye." She felt something move through her. Not a word she could have named right then. She asked who he was saying goodbye to. He looked back at the window. Outside, the trees were dark shapes against a slightly less dark sky. "Nothing moved," he said. "He has to go back soon. The cold makes him tired." He turned from the window then. He went back to bed. He slept. Sarah stood at the window after he left. She looked at the trees. She looked for a long time. She told Daniel at breakfast. Daniel called his brother, who had 3 kids of his own. His brother said it sounded like an intense imaginary friend. He said his daughter had one until she was almost 10. He said it always passes. He said it like someone who wanted to be reassuring and had chosen the easiest available words. Daniel felt better, briefly. Sarah did not feel better. There is sometimes a difference between what logic says and what the body already knows. The body tends to be quieter about it, but it rarely forgets. September 1st, the last true day of summer, the way the Callaways had always measured it. Miles asked at breakfast if he could go outside. Sarah hesitated. Daniel said yes. He went out after breakfast, with his shoes on the wrong feet, which Sarah only noticed as he crossed the yard. She called to him. He corrected his shoes without looking back. He kept walking toward the tree line. Sarah moved to the window. She watched him reach the first row of trees. He stopped there, as the rules required, but then he turned sideways. He appeared to be talking to someone. His lips moved. He nodded. He shook his head. He nodded again. He reached out once and then pulled his hand back. Sarah watched all of this. She saw nothing standing next to him. Only trees. Only the long, quiet space between the trees. She went to the back door. She called his name. Miles turned and looked at her. even from that distance. Something about his face seemed different in that moment. Not wrong, exactly. Not frightened, just settled, like a decision had been made. He walked back to the house. She asked what he was doing at the trees. He said he went back. She asked what that meant. Miles walked past her into the house. He sat down at the kitchen table. He asked what was for lunch. That was all. The nights after that were quiet. Miles stopped waking up. He stopped standing at the window. He ate dinner. He went back to grilled cheese within 2 weeks, which made Sarah feel a specific kind of relief she could not entirely explain. He seemed, to all appearances, fine, back to himself, almost. There was only one thing, a small thing, the kind of thing that might mean nothing. Every morning, without fail, Miles would go to the back window. Not for long, a minute, maybe 2. He would look out at the trees, not with longing, not with sadness, not with fear, just with a kind of quiet recognition. The way you look at a place where something happened, the way you confirm, without words, that you remember. Sarah saw him do it every day. She never asked him about it after the first time. The first time she asked, he had said, "I'm just checking." She asked what he was checking for. He turned from the window. He looked at her with those calm, dark eyes. He said, "To make sure he hasn't come back." She waited. She wanted to ask if that would be a good thing or a bad thing. But the way Miles turned back to the window, the way he stood so still, she decided she did not want the answer. The window fogged briefly from his breath, then cleared, fogged, then cleared. He said nothing else. He went to get his backpack for school. The trees stood where they had always stood, still, patient, the way trees stand when they are not simply trees. The school year started. Miles made friends, normal ones. He laughed at the dinner table. He lost a tooth in October and was proud about it. He was, by every measure, a regular 8-year-old boy doing regular 8-year-old things. Daniel stopped thinking about the summer by November. Sarah took a little longer. She still glanced at the tree line sometimes. Not often, just sometimes. On quiet mornings. On evenings when the light came through the pines at a particular angle and made the shadows lean toward the house. She had looked up the history of the property once, briefly in September. She hadn't found anything useful, or perhaps she had found something she chose not to keep reading. I could not see her screen from where I was. I was standing further back, among the trees, where I have always stood. The only other thing worth noting happened in late October. Miles was raking leaves in the yard with Daniel. It was a gray afternoon, the kind that feels close, like the sky is lower than usual. Miles stopped raking. He looked toward the tree line. Daniel asked what was wrong. Miles said, "Nothing." He went back to raking. But before he did, for just a moment, he smiled. Not the smile of a child seeing something fun, something quieter than that, something that had no name for it that I know of in this language. He raked the rest of the leaves without looking up again. The pile he made was neat, careful, the way you do something when you're trying to look like you're not thinking about something else. Daniel didn't notice. I noticed. I noticed most things. That is not something I chose. It is simply what I am. The Calloway house is still there. The family is still there, as far as I know. The wind chime on the porch still barely moves. The dirt road is still falling further out of use. And the trees are exactly where they have always been. I do not know what Miles found in those woods that summer. I do not know what found him. I only know that the forest here is old, older than the road, older than the houses, older than the people who came and built their quiet lives along its edge. Some things that live in old places are neither good nor bad. They are simply there, waiting for something small enough to notice them, open enough to listen. There is more I could tell you, but some stories are not mine to finish. I have walked this forest a long time, and I have learned that not every shadow needs a name. Rest well. I will still be here. Some stories end. I do not. Walk with me again soon.